Okay, interval progressions, where to start and how to progress on so that you get in that speed initially, but then you're progressing on with the same level of speed or faster in order to move forward. Got a great question from David. What do you think of doing strides as those first interval sessions? I'm thinking of 40 or 50 times 100 meters, that sort of thing. Aiming for the 20 minutes of hard work with enough rest in between the strides to bring the heart rate down. I've been listening to you and now I have a more structured week, but for the quality interval day, just wondering if I can do strides instead of something like 20 times 1 minute. I've been running pretty slowly, coming up to 2 years, want to build some speed. And this was off the back of the interval training for runners video. So what you're actually, where you're at right now is you've been running slowly, you just started to put some structure in. And so naturally you think that the shorter the distance that you're having to run quick, the easier that is. And that's not the case. So 20 times 1 minute with 60 seconds rest in between, it's as hard as you make it. So when I say 20 times 1 minute or 20 times 400 meters or 12 times 400 meters, I'm not saying pelt round as fast as you possibly can for that minute or 400 meters. What it's all about is control. And what I mean by that, and I'll give you an example. When I'm starting to do speed at the start of a structured training session, a structured training schedule, is I will often start with longer intervals. And the reason I'll start with longer intervals is because if I'm doing a 10-minute interval or a 5-minute interval rather than a 1-minute interval or a 2-minute interval, I'm going slower for 5 or 10 minutes. And so it's a nice introduction for me, even though I've done speed session relatively recently within the last month or 6 weeks. It's a nice introduction to speed again. Gets my heart rate up there. Heart rate is getting used to going high and then coming down during recovery. It's a nice sort of split. So it'll be something like 5 or 6 times 5 minutes. The perfect session of 3 times 10 minutes. And that's an introduction to speed. So when you say, I want to do 40 or 50 times 100 meters, you think that that's chopping it up more and making it more sort of bite-sized, easy for you to digest. What you're actually doing there is there's a lot of accelerating from standing still to going, and there's a lot of decelerating. And what you're doing there is using much more muscular movement in the start and the finish than you would do because you're doing 40 or 50 reps and you're going to push faster than what you would do for 20 times 1 minute. Don't get me wrong, 20 times 1 minute is a difficult session. It's a hard session, but as I said, it's hard because you can obviously make 1 minute running as hard as you want, but it's hard to control 20 times 1 minute because there's a lot of them and because a minute to run is a controllable distance, but if you have the experience and you get it right. So what you might want to start with is 10 times a minute. And just get used to the speed in your body and you'll get used to how a minute feels. Then you can start to add more. Go from 10 to 12 to 15 to 18 to 20. And eventually, not only are you going to increase the reps and therefore increase the total volume of the session, but your pace is also going to increase because as you stress the body and then it's able to handle more because you get the super compensation, you then find that your interval, the distance that you can run for each one of those 1 minute increases. And it's not going to increase massively, but 5-10%, and how that compounds over weeks gives you a lot of gains. And what it makes is, whether you're training for 5K or marathon, it will make your race pace seem easier. It'll improve your biomechanics. It'll improve your running economy, the level of energy that you need to move over the ground at the said pace, the race pace. So all these things really matter. But if you said, okay, I'm going to go out and run 100-meter accelerations, that might be something you want to do the day before an interval session. So I might do an easy run on a Tuesday before a Wednesday interval session. Interval session might look like something like 20 times 2 minutes or 4 times 10 minutes. And then the day before on that easy run, at the end of the session, I'll do 8 or 10 times 80 meters accelerations. But it won't be sprinting. I'll be in total control and I'll be trying to be the best runner that I can possibly be. But what I'm essentially telling my body is, tomorrow you're going to do some work and this is how it's going to feel like. And this is a sneak preview of what it's going to feel like tomorrow. And that often gives me a little bit extra on the Wednesday. So it's not taking so much out of the body, if anything at all. It's just preparing your body for the next day. But you don't want to do 40 or 50 times 100 meters. It's just way too much for the body to handle because you'll think you can go quicker, be difficult to recover. But you can start with 10 times 1 minute and get into those 1 minute intervals. And then there's two ways to increase the volume. Either you can increase the reps, as I've just said, 10, 12, 15, 18, 20, or you can do 10 times 75 seconds, 10 times 90 seconds, and onwards from there. There's two ways, but as I said at the start, when I'm getting into speed again, and if it's been a few weeks, a couple of months, I'll start with a longer interval. So yeah, I'm pushing, and I can feel my heart rate going into probably zone 3, which means I can no longer sort of hold a full conversation or any sort of conversation. I'm focused, I'm in it. But it's not a big enough shock to the muscles that it's gonna take me too many days to recover so that I cannot do a long run on the Sunday, which is also providing me with super compensation. It's really important to get these things right because there's an optimal way, but as I also saw in the comments, there was a comment which was, okay, so week 1 is 20 times 400 meters, and week 5 is 5 times a kilometer. Does that mean that week 2 is 1 times a kilometer, week 3 is 2 times a kilometer, week 3, etc.? You can make improvements. If you're new to structure and you're new to speed and you're trying to improve your endurance, pretty much whatever you do, as long as it's gradual and as long as you don't hurt yourself with injury or illness, you're going to move forward. And this is the trick with running. It can trick you into thinking, like back-to-back long runs, not a great idea, but they've worked for some people. So people think that it's a hidden formula, it's a hidden recipe, and therefore it's going to work for them. And maybe it works for them once, but there's an optimal way of moving forward. It's not back-to-back long runs. It's the consistency of you building speed and you building endurance, and that nicely feeding back into each other, and then the consistency and the discipline over weeks. So in that example, I was talking about great sessions for a 5K runner at any level, and 20 times 400 meter, great session for 5K. 5 times 1 kilometers, it's gonna set you up to run the pace that you want to run. These are nice sessions that feed into each other. It's gonna set you up to run 5K as quick as you can. But in between, that doesn't mean it was week 1 and week 5 and the progression should be just kilometer repeats. But because you're new to running and because you're new to structure and speed, you would make improvements if you just did 2 times, started with 1 kilometer as fast as I can, week 1. Next week, interval session Wednesday, 2 times 1 kilometer. You'd make improvement. Then after 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, you would make an improvement and you'd think then, naturally, it's working. When in actual fact, it's not the optimal way to move forward. And as I said in another video, and I don't want to confuse this with too many videos and too many examples, but as I said in another video, good start point might be 12 times 400 meters. Then the next week, 10 times 500 meters. And then the next week, 8 times 600 meters. And then 6 times 800 meters. And basically the philosophy there is we're doing about 5 kilometers of hard work. So we're doing the distance that we're going to run in a race. But what we're trying to do is we're gradually increasing the distance of the rep, is we're trying to maintain or improve slightly pace. And so by the end of the 5, 8 weeks, however long you've got in order to race before your 5K race, you're able to run 5K pace in what you could run just a few weeks before for 400 meters. And that will shock you, but when you're adding structure and speed for the first time, together with the endurance, you should be shocking yourself. You should be going for big percentage gains, but while staying gradual. So it's about the patience of adding the progressions and not going too crazy and controlling the session. If you've got anything from this, I hope all that made sense. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below. And if you've got anything from this, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.